Don't act innocent, Liam, my wife snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut the music. Then her hand cracked across my face in front of 40 guests. I didn't react. I just looked at the ceiling camera and smiled slightly. My name is Liam Caldwell. I'm 34 years old. I work as a mid-level IT technician for a commercial security company. My days involve running cable through office ceilings, configuring camera angles for restaurant owners, and troubleshooting systems that nobody thinks about until they break. I'm not the most exciting person in any room, I know that, I've always known that. Laura is different, she walks into a room and people notice. She's confident, quick with a joke, and she loves an audience. When we met, I thought that energy would balance me out. For a while, it did. But somewhere in the middle of our 10 years together, the balance shifted. My job became her punchline. He fixes computers, she'd say at dinner parties, waving her hand like she was describing a minor inconvenience. Her friends would laugh, I'd smile and say nothing. That was my pattern. I grew up without much. I learned early that patience is not the same as weakness and that watching quietly teaches you more than talking ever could. I'm not flashy, I'm not rich. I don't drive an impressive car or wear expensive things. I wasn't rich or glamorous, but I had something they never expected. I paid attention to everything. The anniversary party was supposed to celebrate 10 years of marriage. Laura had planned it for months, 40 guests. Our house decorated with string lights and catered appetizers. Music she'd curated herself, she wanted it to be perfect. She got something else entirely. If you've ever been the quiet person in the room that everyone underestimates, you already know the feeling I'm describing. People look past you. They talk over you. They assume your silence is emptiness. They mistake your patience for having nothing to say. Some people think the background is where you end up when you have nothing to offer. I've never believed that. The background is where you see everything clearly. If that sounds familiar, subscribe to this channel, share your story in the comments below. And before this story goes where it's going, hit like and click hype. You're going to want to have already done that. The evening started well enough. The string lights across our backyard made everything look warmer than it was. Guests arrived with wine and wrapped gifts, hugging Laura and shaking my hand. The music was low and easy. People laughed, refilled their glasses, and moved between the kitchen and the yard in that comfortable party rhythm. I stood near the drink table for most of the first hour, watching. That's what I do. Laura was in full performance mode. She was glowing, telling stories, pulling people into conversations. I watched her work the room the way she always did, and for a while it felt like any other gathering we'd hosted. Then she started the story about my job. It began as a joke. Something about how she'd asked me to fix the Wi-Fi 3 times last month, and I'd responded with a 12-step explanation nobody needed. Guests laughed, fine. I've heard versions of that joke before, but she kept going. Liam treats our home like a test lab, she said, her voice carrying across the yard. New cameras everywhere, new systems. I keep telling him, honey, we're not the Pentagon. More laughter, then the tone shifted. Honestly though, she said, I've been wondering lately what all the obsession with systems is really about. She looked at me with a smile that didn't match her eyes. Because there are some numbers in our finances that don't add up, and Liam gets real quiet when I ask about them. The laughter got uncertain. A few people looked between us. I set my drink down. Laura, let's talk about this later. She turned toward me fully now, and I could see she had already decided how this scene was going to go. Why later? We're all friends here, she gestured around the yard. Is there something you're hiding? There's nothing to hide, I said. Then why won't you explain where the money went? I kept my voice level. Because this isn't the right time. She took that as confirmation of something. I watched it happen on her face the moment she decided my calm meant guilt. She stepped toward me, and before I could say another word, her hand came across my face. Hard. The sound cut through every conversation in the yard. Dead silence. Phones went up. I could hear the soft clicks of cameras. Laura's voice filled the quiet, don't act innocent. I know what you've been doing. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't touch her. I looked up slowly at the security camera mounted above the back door, and something settled in me, certain and cold. I said maybe we should check what actually happened earlier today. Nobody understood what I meant, not yet. The silence broke into whispers, and the whispers spread fast. Laura seized on the shift in energy and pushed harder. She told the guests that I had been acting suspicious for weeks, disappearing into my office, taking private calls, moving money she couldn't account for. She said it with the confidence of someone presenting evidence, though she had none. Just a story delivered loudly enough to sound true. Her friends formed a small wall behind her. One of them, a woman named Cassie who had never once spoken directly to me in 3 years, said, "Laura deserves honesty." As if she had any idea what honesty looked like in our house. I stood still. I did not argue, I did not explain myself. People read that as guilt. I could see it happening in real time, the way you can watch a crowd make up its mind. Then her brother Derek pushed through from the kitchen. Derek is the kind of man who mistakes volume for authority. He came straight at me, jaw tight, eyes already decided. "What did you do?" he said. "Nothing worth discussing with you," I said. "She's been crying for weeks because of you." He stepped closer, spineless liar. I looked at him for a moment. "The truth will speak for itself." He laughed at that, short and dismissive, and turned back to the crowd like he'd already won. The gathering fractured. People who'd arrived warm and friendly were now keeping their distance from me, pulling slightly toward Laura's side of the yard. I heard one of the neighbors murmur something about the marriage being in worse shape than anyone knew. I heard someone ask if there were children involved, as if they were already calculating the damage. Laura had the crowd, she knew it. She straightened up, took a long breath, and said, "I might be filing for divorce tomorrow morning. I don't know how much more of this I can take." A few people reached out to touch her arm. Someone offered to drive her somewhere if she needed space. I waited until the noise settled into something almost manageable. Then I walked slowly to the living room media console and said, in a voice just loud enough to carry, "Before anyone decides who the villain is, let's watch something together. Here's what nobody at that party knew about me. My job involves installing and testing security systems for commercial clients, but about 6 weeks before the anniversary, I had upgraded our home system as a test environment for a new product line my company was rolling out. High-resolution cameras, motion-triggered alerts, continuous recording to a private cloud account accessible from my phone. I'd mentioned it to Laura casually, she hadn't paid much attention. That afternoon, while I was finishing up at the office before coming home to help set up for the party, my phone buzzed with a motion alert. That happens sometimes when Laura moves around the house. I almost ignored it, but the notification said the alert had triggered in my home office, which is a room Laura almost never enters. I opened the feed. I watched for about 45 seconds. Then I closed my phone, finished what I was doing, and drove home. What Laura didn't know was that every movement in our house that afternoon had been recorded. I had watched the footage 4 times before the first guest arrived. I knew exactly what it showed, and I had made a decision that the truth would come out on my timeline, not hers. The guests who were still in the living room shifted uncomfortably as I stood near the TV. A few people had already started moving toward the door, sensing that something was changing in the room. The ones who stayed did so because curiosity is stronger than discomfort. Jake was already beside me. Jake has been my closest friend since we were 15 years old. He is not dramatic about it. He just shows up. He had helped me install the updated home system 6 weeks earlier, running cables on a Saturday afternoon while we talked about nothing important. He knew exactly how that system worked because he had helped me build it. He stood just behind my right shoulder and he said quietly, "Play it." Laura heard him. She looked across the room with an expression designed to seem unimpressed. "Go ahead," she said, loud enough for everyone. "Play whatever nerdy computer thing you want." Her friends laughed a little nervously. Her brother crossed his arms. The television came on. I connected my phone. The app opened to the recorded footage archive and I selected the file from that afternoon. I pressed play. The time stamp in the corner read 2:47 p.m. The footage was clear. Our home security cameras are not cheap equipment. They record in high resolution with audio. I know this because I selected them myself. At 2:47 p.m. my front door opened. Laura walked in. She was not alone. The man with her was someone several guests recognized immediately. I heard a sharp intake of breath from somewhere near the hallway. Nobody said his name out loud. On screen, the two of them moved through the living room and into the hallway toward my home office. The camera in the office corridor caught them clearly. Laura opened my office door. She went directly to the filing cabinet on the left side of the room. The man stood near the desk. She began going through folders. The audio picked up her voice saying, "He probably keeps the account statements in here. If he has anything set aside, it'll show up in the paperwork." The man responded, his voice lower but still audible, "And if there's nothing," Laura said, "then we use the party." The room behind me had gone completely silent. Not quiet, silent. The kind of silence where you become aware of your own breathing. On screen, Laura straightened up from the filing cabinet and turned toward the doorway mirror. She looked at her own reflection and said, clearly and calmly, He hid something from me, I know he did, so tonight I'm going to make him admit it in front of everyone. She rehearsed it. Not a version of it, that exact line. The man watched her in the mirror and said nothing. I paused the footage. I turned around to face the room. Laura was standing near the kitchen doorway. Her face had gone very still. I said, "You slapped me for something you planned yourself." Nobody spoke, not her friends, not Derek, who had called me a spineless liar 20 minutes ago. Not the neighbors, not the people who had pulled slightly away from me all evening. Laura opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "That's not the full context," she said. But there was no context left. Everyone in that room had just watched her plan the confrontation in her own mirror. The party did not end dramatically. There was no shouting, no second confrontation. The air just went out of it. Guests began gathering their coats and bags in that quiet, uncomfortable way people do when they've witnessed something they didn't plan to witness and don't know how to respond to. A few people touched my arm on the way out. Nobody touched Laura's. She tried once more near the kitchen counter to explain what the footage didn't show. Her voice was controlled but thin. Her friends were already heading for the door. Derek left without speaking to either of us. I waited until most of the guests were gone. Then I looked at Laura and said, "I'm done." She didn't argue. I think she knew. Jake helped me pack a bag that night, not much. A change of clothes, my laptop, my phone charger. We sat in his car in the driveway for a few minutes before driving away, and he didn't say anything unnecessary, which is one of the reasons I've kept that friendship for 20 years. In the weeks that followed, the divorce moved quickly. The footage made the legal process straightforward, not because of what it proved about money. There was no hidden account, there had never been one. But because it demonstrated clearly, and without any ambiguity, that Laura had staged a confrontation at a public event using manufactured accusations. Her attorney advised her not to contest much. She didn't. I moved into a rented apartment 3 miles from my office. I worked, I slept, I rebuilt. I thought a lot about how that night had gone, and about how differently it could have ended if I had reacted the way she expected me to. If I had shouted, if I had pushed back in that yard, if I had let Derek's words pull me out of my own stillness. The footage would have still existed, but nobody would have been in the right state of mind to watch it clearly. The quiet wasn't weakness, the quiet was the plan. They thought the quiet guy in the room had nothing to say, but sometimes the quiet ones are the ones who see everything. If you've ever been publicly humiliated or blamed for something you didn't do, I want you to know that staying calm in that moment is one of the hardest things a person can do. The pressure to react, to defend yourself loudly, to match the energy that's being thrown at you is enormous. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is just wait. The truth doesn't always arrive on time, but when it does arrive, it doesn't need your help making noise. If you've had a moment where the truth finally came out after someone tried to bury it, share it in the comments. Those stories matter. And if you've ever been the quiet one in the room that everyone underestimated, this channel is for you. Subscribe, share your story, and click hype to help this story reach others who need it. Your story has power. If you felt a connection to mine, please subscribe and share your journey in the comments. Every hype you give this video helps empower someone else who might be going through the same thing. Thank you for being here and for listening.